looking for tips after a crime. Some state lawyers are using the concept of snitching to describe what they're now required to do thanks to a decision made by the California Supreme Court last month. Here to discuss the pros and cons of this new era in California jurisprudence are attorneys Holly Moore and attorney Michelle Trigger. Ladies, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, this new rule obligates attorneys to notify the state bar if they have credible evidence that another lawyer has committed a criminal act or engages in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, or deceit. Those who do not comply could face penalties and a 3-year suspension of their law licenses. Now, practicing law already requires a high standard of ethics. So, Holly, wouldn't an ethical lawyer been of a mind to report a concerning situation before this rule was put into place?
I think so. I don't think the rule was necessary, and I think it does add an additional burden on to California attorneys that probably we don't really need. I agree that an ethical lawyer may report something that's unethical, but honestly, in my field, I don't run across like unethical lawyers every day. Of course, with anything, there's a couple bad apples, but most people are ethical and just trying to do what's right by their clients.
Michelle, do you think that this was something, that there was something happening that wasn't being seen, wasn't being reported on a wide scale, and so that this was really necessary?
I think the concern of the Supreme Court was that as attorneys, we tend to be rule followers. And so, for example, when you mention if we see unethical behavior on the part of another attorney, wouldn't we say something? Well, that depends, because if there is no such rule who mandates that and says we need to do so, a rule following attorney is not going to do so. They may actually feel that it's against the lawyer's best interest or against the advisement of the state bar. So for attorneys who may have been concerned in looking for a rule or looking for a basis to report, this rule did not exist and it would not have been there. And so to some extent, I think that that was the concern, is there may have been the ethics hotline is something that lawyers utilize quite a bit. There may have been several calls sort of feeling that situation out. There may have been some complaints that came in with attorneys saying, I'm not sure if I can or should report this. So this was very much a clarification.
Michelle, there's been a lot of controversy about all of this with this move by the Supreme Court. California joins the rest of the country, the 49 other states that have already had this regulation on the books. What is positive about having this written down? You alluded to some of it just a second ago.
I think probably the positive aspect of actually formalizing this rule is it provides the attorneys some guidance as to what really truly should be reported. And so, for example, if there is just simply a thought in our profession or a feeling in our profession of what is deemed unethical, that can be very vague. And many of these other rules that I think our rule now in California was modeled after offered specificity. It tried to actually provide some examples to attorneys so that they were not just guessing, if you will, or speculating or maybe using their own feelings about what could or should be reported, but rather it told us exactly what. And there's still some discretion in there. There is still some room, but us lawyers are very good at finding that wiggle room. But there is certainly more guidance than there was before. And so I think a lot of attorneys will find that helpful, because if they're struggling to know whether they should report something, this is a pretty detailed professional rule that has been issued.
Holly, do you find, we know you're opposed, but do you find any upside to this at all?
I don't think so. Michelle does have an interesting perspective that I had not heard an attorney express that before, that it does offer us guidance. My concern is that if there are any attorneys out there who kind of just want to stick it to somebody else, that they would report something that maybe doesn't exactly fall within the scope or maybe is a gray area. And the concern isn't that, well-doing attorneys are going to be found, quote unquote, guilty of this misconduct. My concern is that it's going to cause a terrible inconvenience in terms of time and resources and effort that's going to have to be put into defending such claims, assuming that they're frivolous. So I think it's just another layer of California sort of adding burdens to the professionals, in California, the business owners, things like that. I think it's just more bureaucracy for California to add to us when we're just trying to help clients and do what is right.
And Michelle, I have to ask, we wish everybody's intentions were altruistic, but if I've got a client, this is a difficult case, and I'm up against a lawyer, do you see how something like this might be able to open the door for someone to think, maybe I'm going to file, a frivolous or untrue report against the lawyer that I'm going to be up against in this case, sort of rattle them maybe during trial prep?
That is a legitimate concern. Our profession is adversarial by nature. Anyone who does, particularly certain areas of law that involve a lot of litigation, I'm sure would agree that it can be very contentious. We also have to answer to clients who very much want to see you exhausting every option and being very aggressive. And I think many attorneys walk the line between doing that ethically and doing it in a way that Ms. Moore has just indicated, or that you've just expressed concern, which is actually, for example, personally attacking an attorney. What I would say, though, is that we're kind of circling back to that initial question. If an attorney was going to report conduct anyway, I think they're going to do it without this rule.
Got it.
Now, they may do it now under the guise, well, I have to, but frankly, the people who are going to be doing these frivolous things, I think they would have done the reporting anyway and said from the onset that they felt that they were compelled to. And ultimately, if it is a frivolous claim, we hope that it's properly investigated and then it's settled as such.
Yes, and maybe some repercussions for the person who filed it. Ladies, thank you so much for helping us break down and understand this new era for lawyers in our state. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.